talked about 2025 being a major comeback for Donkey Kong, but what about the future? They went through all this trouble to put DK on the map, and now it's time to sustain that brand presence into the future. Really well-established IP like Mario and Pokemon always have more goodies up their sleeve, but you can't build that kind of momentum overnight. There are a lot of limitations present, such as manpower required to bring new games and movies to life. Before Bonanza, Vicarious Vision spent 6 months just getting ready to pitch a game to Nintendo. When that whole thing fell through, Bonanza, the Switch 2 launch window title, was being worked on in some form or fashion since 2017. That's the year the first Switch launched. Not only do you have to mind the incredible amount of time and work that goes into these projects, you also have to find the right partners. So now that the theme park is launched and Bonanza is behind us, where does the brand go from here? Let's dive in and try to predict not just this year, but the next 3 years of Donk. Well, as I was writing this script, they updated Donkey Kong Country Returns HD a year and 5 days after it came out. It's better late than never, plus Dixie Kong's Fury Pack adds a lot of missing visual effects, smooths out the frame rate, and fixes the broken co-op. I've had some fun with the turbo attack so far, although it's crazy how weird it feels to go back to normal speed after. Like seriously, I thought my game was bugged and I was playing in slow motion after. It's been a lot of fun before I start work every night to tackle a few stages in turbo attack, mirror mode, and time trial, all in quick succession to just fill up those little circles. Make monkey brain happy. Dixie Kong is this game's funky mode. It's crazy how adding a little height to your jump can totally break the level design. I'm all for this. Adding a character with slightly different abilities to a platform can refresh your experience with it. While I wish the fixes came in a little closer to release, I'm quite happy with the results. There is a bit of a discrepancy with the amount of frames that you have for player 2 to jump on the same enemy as player 1, but considering this game was totally built from the bottom up using Unity instead of the Retro engine, it would be cool to get it fixed, but I'm glad it works at all. I'll be doing another run of the game with my brother sometime soon. They're still making a big push for DK, and the Retro Duology broke into the top 15 best-selling Switch eShop games over the weekend, thanks to this update and a sale they ran for Tropical Freeze. We have our first Mario Sports appearance of the new generation in Mario Tennis Fever. DK and Diddy seem to be the only representatives at the time of writing, and the leader of the bunch himself seems to occupy an important role in the story. It remains to be seen how much DK will get in that game. You'll have to check out our video on it when the game releases. The spring window wouldn't be a terrible time to launch that suspected Mario Kart DLC, although this could go one of two ways. Either they follow the Wii U strategy of having DLC ready about 6 months later, or the Switch strategy of bringing the new content 5 years after they launch the game. I'm leaning more toward the Wii U strategy, mostly because of the whole voice actor thing. We've known for a while that K. Rool and Void's voice actors are in the credits for the base game of Mario Kart World. That's interesting and all, but games like this have a bunch of voice actors bringing all the grunts and oofs that bring a big world like this to life. Who's to say that Suguyo Magami isn't playing this croc in Mario Kart? I was curious about this possibility, so I took a magnifying glass to the actors that are credited in the game. This gets pretty weird, so buckle up. There are a handful of voice actors that we can't match to a character in the game. I think Satoshi Taki and Ko Bunkabara have a history of some background voice roles, so there isn't much of a lead there. The rest are pretty interesting. Yu Hayashi, the voice of Void Kong, is credited with a specific character in every game he's done except for Mario Kart World. He seems to have a specific role in whatever production he's in, like Peter Pan in Kingdom Hearts or Shia LaBeouf in the Japanese dub of Even Stevens. Suguyo Magami is similar, and he actually has a pretty long history with Nintendo going back to 2008. He's the final boss of Final Boss voice actors, playing the Shake King from Wario Land, Demise from Zelda, Andross, and recently K. Rool. While he plays a range of characters for Nintendo, I don't think they would bring him in to do some kind of creature or minor role. And here's where it gets even more strange. Takashi Ohara was the old voice for Link and the current voice for Fox McCloud. While there's a new voice actor for Link in the Breath games, this actor portrayed him in Mario Kart. With Link's previous inclusion and Nintendo's renewed focus on some of their IP back catalog, I could see either of these characters getting in. When I look at the whole picture, I do think we're due for some DLC in the near future. I don't know why they would be credited before the DLC was even added, but my best guess is they had an internal roadmap of stuff to do, and they wanted to grab the voice lines as they needed them ahead of time. I can picture a Donkey Kong DLC this year and a Zelda one next. The reverse could happen too. It really depends on whether or not they want to tie any possible Zelda stuff into the movie that's coming next year. It could also be a wild card Star Fox tie-in, but that's all we know for now. That being said, I think this puts the next chunk of Mario Kart DLC hitting on the first or second week of March. It would be a nice little bonus to Mario Day. This estimation is based on the way they released Mario Kart DLC around the last Mario movie. Note that Wave 4 of Mario Kart Deluxe DLC didn't have anything that actually tied into the movie specifically. I think the strategy from Nintendo is just to have a wealth of content around their movie releases, not necessarily something that fits right into it. I'm thinking they do the suspected Bonanza tie-in to pump that game a little harder before 3D Mario starts to crowd the single-player adventure space. 2026 is the year of anniversaries. We're not finished with Mario's 40th, but we also have celebrations for Pokemon's 30th likely kicking off in February. Zelda's 40th is supposed to hit in February too, but I imagine they'll wait to do anything on that, if they have plans at all. That's the problem with anniversary celebrations for game franchises. With dev cycles ballooning to the better part of a decade for a lot of these big games, how do you plan for these anniversary tie-ins when they come again every 5 years? Mario cheats because there's literally always a Mario game around the corner, but for any franchise outside of that and Pokemon it's difficult. The Zelda movie is not ready, and with Tears of the Kingdom hitting in 2023, the odds of the Zelda team having something big ready to go are slim. Even if a new 3D game was ready, you'd probably want to push that into 2027 to sit alongside the movie. Whether or not Zelda engages in anniversary marketing or not, there's a distinct sense of saturation present in the schedule. Now you might be thinking, why are you talking about Zelda and Pokemon anniversaries on your Donkey Kong channel? Well, I'm bringing them up because they're standing in the way of the Donkey Kong anniversary. Donkey Kong will hit 45 years in July, and with all of these anniversaries going on, I just don't see where there's room to push for another one. At a certain point, it feels like a cheap way to push some extra merchandise. Sonic is doing a 35th push too. There comes a point where it all starts to feel a little superfluous, like they're just stamping an anniversary sticker on things they were already planning to sell you. That being said, there is one thing I could see them doing with the Donkeyversary. While it's a little early to get some form of continuation of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, it's been 3 years since NST hit us with F-Zero 99. Arcade-era Donkey Kong is ripe for some sort of twist on the game that started it all. They could make a little Battle Royale style game in an incredibly tall version of 25M, or flip the concept on its head and have the player in the role of Donkey Kong, chucking barrels down at the stage to stop Mario. Even if NST wasn't up to the task, Nintendo has a decades-long partner for these sorts of games in Arika. They have consistently been making games for Nintendo since 2008. While they make a range of games, one of their greatest strengths is bringing modern twists to classic ones. They did the online Dr. Mario games, the 3D classics on 3DS, and most relevant to our discussion, the classic Battle Royale concept. It started with Tetris 99, but the concept of an arcade-style Battle Royale proved to be popular, with Arika taking that same formula to Pac-Man and Super Mario. Doing something for arcade Donkey Kong would be right up their alley, and the perfect sort of game to lump into the more general celebration of Mario happening around the same time. Nintendo is very conscious of continuing to add value to NSO, and this would be a play for a small but mighty 45th anniversary celebration. There's even some cheeky marketing they could do around it by lumping DK in with Mario and showing both anniversaries. The last little nugget I think we'll possibly get for 2026 is some sort of nod in the next 3D Mario. I think that will drop in mid-October after seeing Nintendo Forecast's great coverage on the concept. He made the case that in the lead up to the Mario Galaxy movie, Nintendo wants people exploring the back catalog of Mario games. Then after people have engaged with the film, Nintendo can hit the growing audience with a big exciting new game. NF pointed out that this is what Nintendo did with Mario Wonder in 2023. Odyssey also came out in October, so I think they are comfortable with that launch window. Grand Theft Auto and Pokemon are almost certainly due in November, so that October launch would make sense. I don't think Mario and DK will have an overt crossover, as that would almost certainly cannibalize some of the excitement of Bonanza, but I could see some sort of arcade homage or Pauline connection to subtly tease the Mario audience and get some of the stragglers to bite down on Bonanza. That'll do it for 2026. I think there will come a point where Donkey Kong will be an annual franchise like Mario and Zelda are, but it will take a lot of time and effort to make that happen. Mario is Mario. There's no shortage of pitches coming in for that, but Zelda had to forge relationships that go back more than a decade with Koei Tecmo, Grezzo, Tantalus, and Capcom to have a game or two every year of the Switch's life cycle. Some of these games will be spin-offs and ports, but there will be something to play nonetheless. The only year they missed was 2022, and that was because Tears of the Kingdom got a delay. Even then, they put Majora's Mask on NSO as a consolation prize. Game development takes forever these days, even for shrewdly managed studios working with Nintendo. There were whispers about a new Donkey Kong game as early as 2018. DK Vine was one of the first outlets to find out about this brand revitalization. We found out from a developer interview that Bonanza did indeed start right after Odyssey. I don't think every game will necessarily take that long, but as we move from HD to 4K, that's going to make a lot of the game creation process harder. It's going to take a lot of time to get a stable of developers lined up to give DK the Mario and Zelda treatment. It's this reasoning that makes me feel like 2027 will be a little dry apply for the Donkey Kong Games department. Before we hit those games, however, it's likely that in April or May of 2027, we'll get our first proper look at the Donkey Kong movie. I should do a proper video on this subject, but I'll briefly say that I think they will lean heavily into the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy. Many of the kids who grew up with DKC have their own children now. I can say for myself, it's a really fun time to be into DK because my kids enjoy it too. They'll have a few arcade gags, but this movie will likely focus on a chunk of Kongs functioning as a family unit. For this trailer, I think we'll get some tiny looks, some cast announcements, and a tease for the main villain. They won't tell us who that villain is, spawning Crocwatch 2.0. Back to the game side of things. There are a bunch of developers who would be thrilled to make a DK game, but I'm guessing the clock on that is starting right about now. I doubt Nintendo was cutting too many deals behind the scenes before they debuted the new era of Kong. They're still figuring out the look and feel of the Kong world going forward, so I would not expect that new DK spin-off in 2027. We are due for a Mario Party in 2027, however, as Nintendo Cube churns them out at a predictable pace. Seeing DK's new look in that will be exciting as it has been in Mario Kart and Tennis. Diddy will likely be back after missing the Jamboree, and who knows, maybe they can sneak Cranky or Dixie in there while they're at it. If the pattern remains, this should hit fall as they usually do. Cranky seems like a really fitting character in particular, as they don't really have a grandparent character in the roster. Around this same time, I think we'll get the heavy hitter NSO games that Nintendo has been holding back on. A staggered release of Donkey Kong 64 and Diddy Kong Racing won't surprise as much as a new game would, but it's the next best thing. DK64 will probably hit in late September or early October, and some of the gruesome mini games will be used as an opportunity to demo the rewind feature that's exclusive to the Nintendo Switch 2. Diddy Kong Racing will probably land somewhere in that range of November or December. These games will be used to retain as many early adopters of the expansion pass as possible. I could also see a King of Swing drop now that the Croc's out of the bag. 2028 is where things get crazy. Given how long we've known about the movie, the copyright filing, and the 2025 reporting that the animation has already started, we can safely assume that this movie is going to release in 2028. I think Nintendo likes this mid to late spring window for their movies, considering they have done it 3 times in a row. Let's say it's the middle of April to split the difference on what they've done for Zelda and Mario. I'm gonna say this movie will heavily pull from Rare's original trilogy while placing most of its focus on the first 2 games. They have reintroduced K. Rool to a younger audience through Bonanza, and Nintendo has stated in their investor briefings that one of the strategies for the movies is to bring multiple generations together. The Mario movie was a good example of this, with plenty of 80s callbacks as well as little hits from newer games like 3D World and Odyssey. While you can bet on some sort of arcade call-out for the older folks in the audience, that story obviously wouldn't work without somehow jamming Mario into the movie as well. The 90s nostalgia therefore is a safe bet, as Nintendo has protected and propped up the country brand with the retro duology in the theme park. Speaking of retro and the theme park, I believe their design aesthetic from Returns will be fully featured as they were in the Mario movie and Epic Universe. I expect the Tikis to appear in some form, although it will not be the focus of the movie. I'll make another video going through our hopes and dreams for the film at some point, but let's leave it at that for now. Here's the big one. Somewhere in the October to November window, they will be looking to launch their next Donkey Kong Country game. The reason I say this will hit a little after the movie rather than before is because I have been won over by Nintendo forecasts and his understanding of the movie strategy. In the lead up to a new movie, this is the chance for the more invested fans to pick up some of the back catalog games they missed out on. New or lapsed fans have a large library to choose from as they're just now approaching the franchise. Nintendo had a thick collection of Mario games readily available in the lead up to the original Mario movie. Having a new game would cannibalize the initial box office run of the film, so they waited until June to announce the next big Mario adventure. Mario Wonder launched in October of that year, and if they run the same play with the Galaxy movie, I think they're locked into this cadence. We should also note, the year following the original movie had a strategic blitz of titles to highlight most of the main cast. Mario vs. Donkey Kong to promote the rivalry scene in the movie, Princess Peach Showtime to boost the profile of Peach, Luigi's Mansion 2 to give Luigi more than 5 minutes of screen time, and a bunch of other games to capitalize on the moment. We're not speculating into 2029, but I think this is where we'll see our first proper DK spin-off. Nintendo has a massive network of studios specializing in RPGs, and there might be a little Mario RPG fatigue in the general market, so I wonder if they would task one of these developers with a different franchise in between Mario follow-ups. While I loved King of Swing and Jungle Climber, I would anticipate the same spin-off strategy that Mario has. Take popular character and mash them with popular thing. In any case, we have to deal with the elephant in the room. Who is making this 2028 Donkey Kong Country game? I have put a disturbing amount of research into this, and my conclusion is, I don't know. While I don't know specifically who would be making it, I can take you through a short list of developers who could be. Let's start with Retro Studios. I've said in previous videos that I think this would be Retro's next game. They did an excellent job with their duology in terms of sales and critical acclaim. Like every other game on the Wii U, Tropical Freeze didn't really take off, but it made up a lot of ground on the Switch. If Nintendo wanted the easiest solution to creating a DKC game, this would not be a bad place to start. Somehow these Giga Chads made Tropical Freeze in about 2 years, a wildly efficient dev cycle. While there have been a lot of team members exiting throughout Retro's quieter years, a solid core of Tropical Freeze's original team remains, pointed out by the excellent Nintendo Forecast in his recent deep dive. Seriously, if you're not watching this guy's videos, what are you doing? The other big thing in Retro's favor is their environmental design. Not only did they make really vibrant and gorgeous levels that feel alive, they were also adapted to the theme park and for the film. Would Nintendo want to have someone imitate Retro's work or start from scratch? These are the reasons I could see Retro doing the next game, but like I said before, I've put a lot of thought into this conundrum, and I've recently had the pleasure of talking to Reese of Kiwi Talkz, a game dev interview podcast with a wild collection of discussions with all sorts of game creators, including a big number of Retro employees. Reese thinks Retro will be heading in a different direction, so I wanted to give him the floor to explain his thoughts. While Reese has a lot of insider information, this is not any sort of leak. This is a knowledgeable gentleman sharing his informed opinion. Please don't write wacky headlines and put words in his mouth. Anyway, take it away, Reese.
Thanks, Catrello. So, the reason I don't think a Retro Studios Donkey Kong game will happen is for a number of reasons. Firstly, Donkey Kong Country Returns happened because of an aligning of the planets type moment, where Retro were burned out on Metroid. A lot of key employees at Retro had left. They had lost their most beloved programmer, Mark Haig Hutchinson, the genius who invented Metroid's camera system, and he had died of pancreatic cancer. And Nintendo weren't really doing anything with DK at the time and needed a team. Michael Calbor was also a huge DK fan and advocated heavily for it, and Iwata had a huge amount of respect for Retro and what they had accomplished with the Metroid Prime games. So it was a combination of multiple things coming together. The initial sales and reception to Tropical Freeze was really hard on Retro and Nintendo. If you actually recall, the Tropical Freeze trailer was trashed for being another Nintendo platformer and not Metroid Prime, and the game's initial release actually flopped on the Wii U. It lost Nintendo quite a bit of money, but the good news is it did get a second wind on Switch, but Retro had become a different studio by this stage, and that's the main thing. Retro Studios is a different company today. They lost a lot of their autonomy because of the failure of Harmony, which cost Nintendo huge amounts of money, and so Nintendo are a lot more hands-on with their games than they used to be. Personally, I don't actually think that's a good thing given what we experienced with Metroid Prime 4. And speaking of Prime 4, this was one of Nintendo's most expensive games ever. And Nintendo invested huge amounts of money to basically train Retro on how to be the Metroid Prime studio again, and built up the team, built up the resources, and built up the production pipeline for outsourcing. And on top of that, they hired a lot of artists and programmers who are experienced with more realistic games and have worked on first-person shooters such as Halo, Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Doom. The whole reason why Nintendo bought Retro Studios in the first place was to create games that Nintendo themselves couldn't make. Nintendo's whole philosophy is to build a diverse set of games to encourage more people to buy into their ecosystem. Metroid hits a very different demographic to the DK, Mario, and Kirby games, and no one internally at Nintendo is actually equipped to make a Metroid Prime game, whereas quite a few different teams could make a 2D Donkey Kong Country game. Lastly, Nintendo brought DK in-house so they had full control over their property. Nintendo deeply valued DK, which is reflected in the theme park and the upcoming movie. So when you consider all of this, I just don't expect Retro to work on DK again.
Thanks for stopping by. It's a lot to consider. If this is the first time you're hearing about the Kiwi Talkz podcast, I'm going to leave a link to the playlist of the Donkey Kong interviews at the end of this video. He's getting ready to interview a concept artist that worked on Tropical Freeze and Returns. You've probably seen some of his work as unlockables in the Retro duology. While you would assume that Nintendo would just grab a chunk of devs and assign Donkey Kong to them, most of the internal Nintendo teams are really busy with their own normal output. They are building a larger building to house more developers, but that's not scheduled to open until at least 2028. Also, while Nintendo really pioneered the 2D platformer as we know them, they haven't done one internally since the mid-2000s besides Mario. All the more recent adventures of Wario, Yoshi, and Donkey Kong were made outside of those teams. They have a long working relationship with Goodfeel, for instance. Goodfeel has crafted a variety of platformers featuring Nintendo IP since 2008. They made a Wario Land, Kirby spin-off, Princess Peach Showtime, and every Yoshi game since New Island. The problem with this group is that they're quite busy with their Nintendo partnership. They put out about showtime in 2024, and while we don't know for sure who's making Yoshi's Funny Book, my money is on Goodfeel. While they could technically turn a DK around in 2 more years, that would take away from Yoshi and Peach. There's a huge push for these characters lately, and I think NCL will want to keep up that momentum. Goodfeel would also be some of the first candidates for a Wario Land revival, so would they have time for the Simian Supreme as well? The other developer churning out Yoshi games was Artoon, which dissolved and gave birth to Arzest. They made Yoshi's Island DS and Yoshi's New Island. They also made Hey Pikmin and Sonic Superstar, so the experience with 2D platformers is there, as well as the relationship with Nintendo, but you have to wonder why they haven't worked together since the 3DS. Overall, I don't think this one is likely, but it is possible. Let's say Nintendo went on a hiring spree. How could they go about making this game internally after all? I mean, sure, they have given all their 2D platformer franchises besides Mario away in the past, but with this recent Donkey Kong focus, maybe they're afraid of another Rare or Retro situation where they don't have a permanent home for DK. While it would be somewhat of a natural fit to make DKC at EPD10, they're already responsible for 2D Mario and Pikmin. They have sought out support on Pikmin from 18, suggesting that there isn't a whole lot of spare staff and time to go around. This team also did Mario Maker, and you could definitely imagine a sequel or a buffed up Switch 2 version developed to showcase the mouse mode and online features. Like, picture a sequel letting you build courses with your friends using mouse mode and game chat. NST is another option. They make the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games and they're relatively close to Retro Studios. You would think there could be some sort of warm handoff to have this growing team handle DK's next adventure. They also have a good relationship with the team that made Donkey Kong Bonanza, having co-developed the Bowser's Fury part of the whole Mario 3D World package. Speaking of EPD Tokyo, why not just form another team there? They apparently formed one to do Donkey Kong Bonanza, maybe they can just hire more and do DKC there too. This is certainly possible. The studio was founded on a side-scrolling Donkey Kong platformer, so why not? Well, you have to imagine they're pretty tied up. Making tentpole system-selling games isn't easy, and they can't really afford to miss launch windows of upcoming consoles and initiatives. If they pull off launching a 3D Mario alongside DK Bonanza, that would be an impressive feat unto itself. Could they also make a country game? Funny enough, you guys remember those original DK EPD rumors? A lot of people who are allegedly in the know said it with their chest that the DK game they were working on was definitely 2D. Nintendo Life corroborated that claim with sources that they had. While we assume that Bonanza proved that rumor wrong, what if they were working on both? There were some job listings for 2D level design in the Tokyo office after all, and while that could have been for Bonanza's bonus stages, I think there's only like 5 of them. Would you really need to hire from that, or would you just borrow some people from the EPD10 team? Like we covered before, there isn't as deep a branch of 2D talent as you would assume at Nintendo. While on one hand I feel like it's a little far-fetched based on the sheer amount of people it would take to execute on this, it is possible. Nintendo is trying to build out more space for their Kyoto-based developers. The Tokyo ones reside in the Konda Square building. This is a new office finished in 2017 where EPD8 now resides. This move was part of an effort to consolidate the amount of travel necessary for collaboration. This building also houses 1UP Studio, who assisted on Mario Kart World and Bonanza. Game Freak and HAL Laboratory are now in this building as well, which shows the long-term investment in this area on Nintendo's part. Maybe having the entire Donkey Kong team here isn't so far-fetched after all. Listen, all of this is conjecture. I only know as much as a normie can with a Donkey Kong obsession and an internet connection. While I'm 100% sure that a big chunk of these predictions will be hilariously wrong, I hope that this was a fun thought experiment not only to dream about what could be next for the Kongs, but also to look at the landscape of game developers responsible for the games we love. Especially in this HD era, hundreds of people dedicate themselves to making some excellent experiences, and I wanted to try and shed a little light on just how much goes into bringing one of these to life. I want to hear from you. No editing in the comments, lock in, and give me some of your predictions for the future of Kong. Thank you to Reese from Kiwi Talkz, thank you to Nintendo Forecast for your incredible videos, and thank you to the one who had very long conversations helping me think through this. I know you keep a low profile online, but I just wanted to shout you out.